Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. We all face a massive question in our lives. Is the success you have something you've clawed your way to, something you've built with your own two hands, or is it a gift? Today we're diving into the wild story of a man who literally lived this question. He starts out as a schemer, a guy who takes what he wants, but he gets thrown into a brutal, life-changing fight that leaves him totally broken, but also transformed. His journey is like an ancient blueprint for how we find out who we really are.
So let's just start right there and be real with yourself for a minute. When you look at your life, do you see yourself as the sole architect of everything good that's happened? Or do you sometimes feel like you're being guided by something you can't quite put your finger on? This is the exact puzzle we're going to explore through the life of a man named Jacob.
Okay, so his story basically sets up these two core mindsets. On one side, you've got the grabber. We all know this type, right? The person who believes you gotta hustle, you gotta scheme, you gotta take what's yours. Then on the other side, you've got the receiver, who believes the best things in life aren't things you achieve, they're things you're given. The incredible part of the story is that Jacob starts out as the ultimate grabber, but life is gonna force him to become something else entirely.
So to really understand how it changes, we've got to go back to the very beginning, with a guy whose whole identity was built on taking things that weren't his.
I mean, his name tells you everything you need to know. In Hebrew, Yaakov, or Jacob, literally means grabber, or even one who trips someone up. The story even says he was born physically grabbing onto his twin brother Esau's heel, trying to get ahead from his very first breath. See, in the ancient world, a name wasn't just a label, it was your destiny, and Jacob was destined to live up to his.
And oh boy, does he live up to that name. He pulls off two of the most audacious schemes you can imagine. First, he finds his brother Esau starving after a hunt and cons him into trading his entire birthright, his inheritance, his status, his future, for a single bowl of soup. Just think about that. Then he actually puts on a disguise to fool his own blind, dying father into giving him the sacred family blessing that was meant for his brother. This isn't some small-time trickery. He is the definition of a grabber.
But here's the first major twist, and it's a huge one. What Jacob has no idea about is that a divine plan was already in motion. Before he and his brother were even born, a prophecy was given to their mother that the older brother would one day serve the younger. All of his scheming, all the deception, all that effort, it was completely unnecessary. The very thing he was trying so desperately to steal was already his. Well, of course, actions have consequences. His brother is furious, like, "I'm going to kill you," furious, so Jacob has to flee for his life. And this is where his real education begins, because he runs straight into the arms of someone who's an even bigger grabber than he is. By the way, if you enjoy this channel, please subscribe and press the like button. It's a huge help and lets us keep making more explainers just like this one.
So he ends up at the home of his uncle Laban. Now you have to picture this. Jacob has spent his entire life being the smartest, most cunning guy in every room he's walked into. He's about to find out what it feels like to be on the other side of that. He's about to meet his match. There's this amazing, almost funny moment when Jacob tells his uncle the whole story. The schemes, stealing the blessing, everything. And Laban just smiles and says, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." It's like he's saying, "I get you. You're one of me." He's not shocked. He recognizes a fellow con artist. Game on.
And the irony is just perfect. Jacob works for 7 years for the woman he's fallen in love with, Rachel. But on the wedding night, his uncle Laban pulls a classic switcheroo and tricks him into marrying the older sister, Leah, instead. The ultimate deceiver gets deceived. And to get Rachel, he's got to work another 7 years. He gets a huge dose of his own medicine. And if there's one thing a manipulator hates, it's being outmanipulated.
Okay, so fast forward 20 years. Jacob's built a big family, he's become wealthy, but now he has to finally go home and face the brother he wronged. The night before this terrifying reunion, at his absolute lowest point, he has an encounter that's going to change absolutely everything.
Just listen to his prayer here. This is not the voice of that confident schemer we met at the beginning. This is a man who is terrified, who's broken, and who's admitting for the very first time in his life that he is not in control. He basically says, "I'm not worthy," and he begs to be saved. The grabber has finally hit a problem he can't talk or trick his way out of. So he sends his family and everything he owns across a river, making himself completely vulnerable and alone. And then, in the pitch blackness, some mysterious figure attacks him. And they wrestle all night long. It's this violent, desperate, chaotic struggle. Now, whether you think this is a literal angel, or God himself, or maybe a psychological battle with his own inner demons, the result is the same. This is a man fighting for his very soul.
And as dawn starts to break, the stranger asks him this one piercing question: "What is your name?" This is not small talk. This is a demand for a confession. He's being forced to own up to his identity, to say out loud who he really is. I am Jacob. I am the grabber. I am the deceiver.
And this is the pivot point for his entire life. Jacob is injured. He's exhausted, but he holds on. He's not trying to steal a blessing in the dark anymore. He is clinging to this divine force and demanding a blessing, face to face. He says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." He's done with the tricks. He's ready for an honest fight.
In the middle of the struggle, the stranger touches Jacob's hip and dislocates it, leaving him with a limp for the rest of his life. So he leaves this encounter physically weaker, but he's spiritually transformed. That limp, that physical scar, becomes a permanent reminder that his greatest victory came at the moment of his greatest weakness.
The fight finally ends, and Jacob walks away a completely new man. He doesn't just have a limp, he has a new name, and that name signifies the birth of a whole new identity.
I mean, this slide says it all. He goes from being Jacob, the grabber, a man whose whole life was about his own clever schemes, to Israel, which means he who wrestles with God. His entire identity shifts. It's no longer about what he can take. It's about the profound struggle he just endured.
The name Israel is just so packed with meaning. It's a mix of the Hebrew word for to prevail or to rule, and El, the word for God. So his new identity is about having power, but it's a power he earned, not by cheating, but by going toe-to-toe in an honest, painful struggle with the divine, or with the chaos of reality itself. So, what's the big takeaway here? What's the point of this whole story? Well, Jacob's life reveals this deep kind of paradoxical truth about how we find our purpose and receive the things that actually matter.
This whole story really comes down to this one powerful idea: grace. And look, you don't have to be religious to get this concept. Think of it as unearned favor, as luck, as accepting the things you can't control. The great irony of Jacob's life is that the blessing was always meant for him. He just had to be physically and spiritually broken of his grabbing habit before he was finally in a position to simply receive it.
So Jacob's journey kind of gives us this three-step map for transformation in our own lives. First, to look up, and to recognize that maybe there's a bigger story unfolding that we're a part of. Second, to look in, to be really honest about our own weaknesses and admit we can't control everything. And finally, to look around, and to work on fixing our relationships, because that's where so much real growth happens.
And that leaves us with this one last question to chew on. In your own life, in your career, your relationships, your search for meaning, are you still operating like Jacob, the grabber, trying to scheme and manipulate your way to a blessing? Or have you learned what it means to become Israel, to engage in that honest, difficult, and ultimately transformative wrestle for it?